Introduce the panel today. Joining us on the panel today are Nosipho, Maketo-van and Bragt. Some of you might have seen her yesterday, heard her talk. She's the head of Chocolate Tribe Studio, and she's an attorney and writer. So she's the one who's actually started as a lawyer and switched to run one of the biggest VFX and animation production house out of Johannesburg, Africa. Next on the panel is Kireet, Khurana. Many of you might already know him. He's the founder and creative head of Climb Media, one of the very well-known animation production studios in India. The third panelist is Uttam Singh, or UP as we fondly call him. He's the head of the Kids Cluster, Warner Brothers, Discovery India, Cartoon Network, Pogo, Discovery Kids. Basically everything to do with kids content is under UP. And last is from the writing point of view. We have Teja Pratap, independent creative director, writer, and showrunner for animated series, who's worked on a bunch of shows for Discovery Kids and Cartoon Network. And I'm Rituparna Sarkar. I'm one of the AGI co-founders, and I run a small design studio called Visual Sarcasm, and we also try to create content, which is why this panel is as much for my interest as for all of you. So let us begin. All right, so the questions are fairly loose-ended.
There are some seats vacant here. Ice, if you want to come, any people, if you want to come in front.
Yeah, people, there are about 5 seats in the front, so just move ahead so that when people walk in later, they have space at the back. Do you guys need bottles? Should we give you? Do we have 2 more bottles? Okay, let us begin. The questions are fairly open-ended, but you can all give your own twist to the answers. Okay, first question. And this, we can all, I'm posing it to all of you in turn. Okay, so we are constantly being bombarded with content today because of social media. So the question is, what do you think constitutes an original idea? How do you interpret that? Do you think subconsciously everything is already created? Who wants to go first?
Hi. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I must tell you a little story that, that made us laugh a short while ago. I didn't realize I was on this panel. So I was sitting there saying, I'm so fascinated by this panel. I want to see what they're going to say. And then my name comes up, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's new. Thank you so much. I think for me, I'll come from a legal perspective. What constitutes original content is something novel. I mean, how it's defined, even in IP law, it has to be something new, fresh, that's not done before. And I know that sounds a little bit, a bit kind of like uncertain, because a lot of the content, as you're saying, is all over the place from social media. We inspire each other. You know, you see someone's photograph, you hear someone's story, you write that story based on something, so there's a point of reference. But there's got to be something unique and something different. I mean, I think a lot of us, even sitting here, we would pretty much tell the same story, but we would come from different backgrounds or different lived experiences. And I think that is what would be novel and unique and different. So what I would advise also young people and any filmmaker, look for something that is unique, that's different, that adds something and creates a new space. One of the things that just let me know if I'm over talking, and then I can hand it off to the next person. I think one of the reasons why I ended up coming to India, I met a young lady called Archana who connected us, and she was my mentee. And the conversation we had was, she was talking about how she wanted to come to India and start an animation studio, and was fascinated by my story and my ownership of being African, black female and not embarrassed about that. And she said, since she lives in LA, she was a bit, uncomfortable with owning her identity. The reason why I'm saying that is because part of IP, part of novelty is also who you are. It's that thing about you. So that's what I would say would kind of like be different. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, that was very well said. I don't think I could add more. And I would just say that was a very tough question, by the way. I was really thinking. Thankfully, you took the mic. But just to encapsulate everything and adding that, is the personality of the creator who's doing it. I think that there's a lot behind the voice who's telling it through that medium. Of course, everybody has Maya as a tool available, After Effects, Flash, or any other medium as it. Any tool is available to everybody, right? But it's just the voice who is translating that thought. And I think that's where an originality or the idea or the germ of an idea really takes shape. And how do you then, take it ahead? So personality of the creator is a really big factor, in the entire process of creating an original content.
Okay.
It's that person's perspective, how they see the world. So you always have that a world view. Everybody has their own world view. So when you're going about that, sometimes, although whenever you're making something, you're writing for someone, you're cooking up ideas. You know the difference between when you're actually thinking up something to put out there. But there are moments when, even in that process, you channel who you are. But there are moments when something hits you. You know that, wow, this is amazing. Something, an experience from your life, or a dream, or something comes to you, and you know that that's given, that's not thought. And that germ will grow into something which is original. You add things, you add layers to it, depending on your perspective of the world, and then it becomes an original idea. At least you will feel that it is original. So yeah, those are the moments when I value those ideas. When I pitch, I know that this has come to me. This idea is given, the germ of the idea has come to me. That I would call as an original idea.
I'm probably the cynic over here. I think, is there any story left to be told here? Is there anything that has been left to be told? The thing that I learned in film school is there are only 12 stories, and some used to say there are only 4 stories, right? And if you take a Mahabharata or you take a Huckleberry Finn, you have pretty much all the stories that ever were told in this world, right? So then it comes down to what is left behind for us. Is there nothing original in that space? So it comes back to, again, our take, which is what Nosipho talked about. What is the way we are interpreting the truth out there? So everybody is trying to find their truth, and everybody is trying to find their voice and their meaning. And what is the voice, original voice that is coming in there? What is your take on the idea? What is the truth that you can find in that? And so there are 8 billion truths out there, as many people there are, all of us have our own truths. All of us have our own understanding of life. And that is important to understand. The challenge is not to make something original. I think as children, we are born original, we are born creative. We can make that. The problem comes in as we grow up. We have to make it for a certain audience. We have to make it to a certain paradigm. We have to make it to a certain research. If we want to scale it up, if we want to make it a series, let's say, no, this will not work because we have done our research. And this will not work because whatever, and this is going to be popular between 7 to 12, and this will not work between 12 to 16, and so on and so forth. Those rules come into play. And that's when the challenge comes in, because I think there's some great artists over here. I saw some of the work is really brilliant. And at a 5-minute, 7-minute level, you can make a great short film, and that's original, and that's your voice, and because it has your own distinct form, it has your own distinct truth, it has your own distinct psychedelia. It has a distinct understanding as psychology behind it. But how do you scale it? How do you scale it? How do you get it out to reach out to the rest of the world is the real challenge, I think. The other thing is, there are no bad stories, only bad storytelling, right? And one has to understand that if one has to really scale something that is an original idea, it needs to be a great storytelling attached to it. And of course, there has to be a market along with it. The issue comes in when you create something so original and something so distinct that does not have too many references or counter references, that people can't identify and they're not sure if the product is going to be saleable or marketable or can work with the audience. And that's where most of the ideas, great ideas, get killed. So that's my take.
I think, yeah, I mean, we are also going to come to this, the data related content development. But I think, yeah, like all of you were pretty unified in your answer. I think that was a great thought. There are 800 billion people, so 800 billion potential original ideas. It's pretty nice.
8 billion.
8 billion, sorry.
Let's not explore it so much.
Soon there will be 800 billion. Okay, next question. Again, has there been a noticeable change in the animation industry that you guys have observed in terms of the type of content being created and consumed? Again, like, are the tastes and preferences changing? Are the platforms changing? Where all are we seeing the consumption of animation from that point of view? And it's open to anybody who wants to answer.
So I'll start now, I guess. We'll go back. Okay. So I come from a different era. Probably I'm the dinosaur in the group. I come from an era where I came back from Sheridan College in '95 and there was no animation happening in this country at all. Okay. The only two animators were my father and Mr. Beams, my father was Mr. Beamsen and Ram Mohan, who was the Indian animation pioneer. So these were the only two places where animation was happening, that too at a short film level or a small series level and so on and so forth. There was no scalability. I have seen the industry grow and I have seen the industry evolve. And I think it's been a fantastic growth. I think what we have seen also in this space is from a few 10, 15 people that who you could count in your hand. Today we have probably a force of more than 2 lakh, 3 lakh people as far as animation, VFX and gaming artists are concerned, which is fantastic, and it's exploding because more and more artists are coming into the space. The idea is that I think over the years we started off largely, I'm not saying, again, there are many exceptions, including me. I created some original content, did not succeed too well. But the idea is that all of us started off servicing international companies. We became the back office. We became the sweatshop we became the end scroll for many of the companies that you see. A lot of the animation that happens is the end scroll. So the artists and the voice that we have got lost somewhere. And I think now it is a time for us to assert that. It is a time for us to assert that because we are original thinkers. We have come to a point where we have great artists and we just don't know how to mobilize ourselves. We just don't know how to kind of find the right mentors, to find the right kind of platform and to kind of get things going. And I think now is the time that Indian animation is going to go to the next level significantly, where we'll actually create something that is outstanding, because also of the fact that there are many adult shows that are doing very well on OTT platforms. And that's where the draw is. And still, you get a complaint that most of the OTT platforms, you get a sort of, they whine that India does not have that kind of great storytelling skills in adult animation, therefore we don't want to commission that. So we still relegated to, making content for kids. Nothing wrong with that. But I think it's time now, because there are a lot of sensible artists, a lot of amazing people, a lot of good filmmakers, a lot of very, very iconoclastic filmmakers that I've seen in animation who have come in, who can really break that glass ceiling and make things work. That's what I feel.
Yeah, definitely. There is going to be always change, because times change, and according to that, the audience consumption, it changes. I grew up watching He-Man, and that used to be the Sunday routine, He-Man, and then followed by Ramayana. Then later on came Jungle Book, and now much later, Indian animation, it used to be syndicated content before, then original shows started being made in India, and a bunch of studios have come. They're making amazing content for kids. So there has been a change like that. And then, like Kireet said, with the advent of OTTs, there's more content, there's more animated content for a little more grown-ups. It'll always change. So I would say that definitely there has been a change and it's evolving. Is it evolving at the pace that we would like? That is debatable. That's for each one to decide. So yeah, definitely there is a change.
Right. So, two parts to this question: how the animation has changed. From my perspective, when I first heard about animation, maybe I just wanted to do it all my life. It's just that the term was pretty new to me when I was in college, and I was in the wrong stream. And then I switched, after architecture, joined NID, and that's when I became a professional. But it was still hard for me to convince my parents that I can make a living. So that was a time, but I hope not. This is not the case now anymore. Post that, you trying to figure out where your voice really rests. There were channels like MTV and Channel V, which used to attract a lot of those talent, which had these crazy voices and styles, and they could showcase your work. I mean, comparing it to the time of Mr. Ramon and Bhimsen Ji, when Doordarshan was the only platform where you could showcase your work, and they had the budget to also sponsor the films and the stories that you. And at that point of time, the agenda was about unifying the country, because it was a really fresh new country. So the voices had to really connect and portray that our differences, besides that, we are one nation. Two, coming to this time when animation became more of not just communicating, through advertising, but also an entertainment medium, which is what the youth of the nation was trying to convey. They wanted to be rebellion, they wanted to have a different voice, not be casted in a certain mold. And I mean, it's still continuing, so that's a great thing. However, those platforms have changed again. At that point of time, 1995 or 2000 was the first kids network which was launched in India. 2003 was Pogo, which was only India Kids Network. Cartoon Network came in 1995 in India. And from that one channel to now about 20 kids channels which are flourishing in India across geographies, across regional territories, and also the national channels. So in my view, the kids animation and the entire industry has really come together strongly. We were only producing one long format show, started with Chhota Bheem. There were other, of course, many attempts, but that really changed the face. Two, now each and every channel wanting to sponsor and commission an original Indian animated show, because the audiences now is more open to receiving Indian content. At that point of time, they were also trying to understand the medium, but the kids today or the youth today, they really were good audience receivers, and that's how the industry kind of grew. If we didn't have that audience and the support from that end, I don't think we would have grown to this far. And that's where I think it's great. Now the question is, because of the entire digital linear other platform divide. So of course, we are going through a transformation again. The audience is getting divided. So is the form of storytelling. While we still continue to do short form, but on mobile, it's a completely different format, and people are trying different ways. So, I mean, there's a new wave of storytelling coming as we see currently.
So I agree totally with my fellow panelists, but I'd like to also take a different angle and perhaps, reflect from an African perspective, because that's what I understand. An African perspective, but also a global perspective. I think animation itself as a profession has changed. Previously people used to see animation as more a childlike and diminish it almost like it's not a real career. And as I think I was talking about it yesterday, how even youths in our country, if you're doing animation, you're seen as you're not doing a real job, But I'm really, really heartened by what I'm seeing here, that you guys take it very seriously. It's a profession, you're passionate about it, and I'm going to take this message back home as well. So I think the biggest change for me is seeing animation as a viable career. You know, you are somebody, you are a professional. You're not just, you know, some sort of person who's doing a part-time hobbyist type of thing. So for me, that's a huge change. I think what that has translated to is animation as a business, because if it's a business, then it sits in the same level or same strata as all the other careers, you know. So if you're an animator, you're at the same level as a lawyer, an accountant, and all of that. And so for me, I always conscientize business owners, to creative business owners, to take animation and all the other creative pursuits as businesses. And sometimes I get flack from my fellow artists because they're like, it's not a business, it's a passion. And I'm like, I get it, it is a passion, but you've got to understand the bottom line. If you want the Disneys, the Netflixes, and all these big studios to take you seriously, you've got to understand it as a business. So for me, those are the two fundamental changes that I've seen in, you know, the past kind of like few years. And I think COVID has added an additional positive layer, because when people couldn't film, you know, live action movies, they started looking at animation as a viable option to, you know, storytell. It was no longer relegated to, you know, that thing that you only, you know, service for children. And I always refer to Arcane, for example, Love, Death and Robots, which, sorry, there's a fly that wants to help me, but you know, those two shows have also impacted how animation is seen as not just a children's storytelling medium, but an adult, you know. So I think for me, those are the two major changes, and I'm very happy to see that, so that animators, creatives are not seen as, you know, people who dropped out of school and who are not contributing. A culture regenerates itself, and a culture is recognizable for the most part because of the artists, you know, and I'm constantly making that push, so yeah.
Glad you brought that up. To add to that point, when I used to attend any weddings or family functions or anything, I used to sit with a bunch of kids and tell them stories, and people my age, my cousins and other guys and girls of my age in my relatives circle, they used to sit and talk all the grown-up stuff. They used to talk, you know, I want to do this MPA, I want to do this and that. They have the plans set out. Serious fellows. And I used to sit with a bunch of kids and I used to tell them stories, play with them. And probably at some level, nobody said this to me, but I could see it in their eyes that this guy is not a serious fellow. Not like a career guy. But now, once they know that I'm writing for animation, now there is Indian content that is being made. Oh, he is into animation. They understand that there is something that happens. You know, it gets published, and then the name appears on screen. So they think, oh, he's doing something. He's all right. He's not mad or he's not whacked out in his head. That way, yeah.
I was sorry. No, I wanted to say that when I sort of moved from law, you know, running a law practice, to animation, everybody thought I was having a nervous breakdown. They were like, are you okay? I mean, why would you do this? You know what I'm saying? So that is also how serious they take it, besides the fact that they might think you're, I don't know, there's something wrong with you. There's even a higher level of saying there is something wrong with you, you know, so.
Just to add on to that point, this is a story from the studio which we work with, like, you know, very closely on a show called Little Singham. And it's just, like, you know, across the 5 years, you know, the head of the studio was telling me there have been like 5 marriages which have happened because these guys were working on Little Singham. So the family, when they told, like, you know, that I'm working on Little Singham, they knew it. Yes, mera bhatija dikhta hai, mera ye, and instantly, like, you know, the marriage clicked. So these are different times. So is the case, and, you know, now we can call it proudly that we are animators.
Hello? Yeah. Yeah, these stories are all very heartening. And honestly, I mean, I also think when I graduated and I told my father I'm going to choose animation, there was a pause on the telephone line, and his first thought was, so are you going to do the kangaroo which is jumping during the World Cup? Then every time somebody hit a six, there was a kangaroo that was jumping. So yeah, while I associate with all these positive thoughts you guys said, can I also be a devil's advocate and bring up 2 points? One is, while kids animation has really progressed, now with the advent of Netflix and all, content is global. Indian kids or whoever has access to these global, content channels are actually watching a lot of content. So why is India taking time to catch up to the fact that animation is not necessarily for kids? And it is an art form, right? Like how for years, of course, we are all like in the industry, so we feel extra passionately, which is why we're all here. But why can't we use animation to tell adult stories, which is the point that Kireet was also trying to bring up. So what is it that's stopping Netflix or whatever, OTTs or other channels in India taking that next step? Of course, we are celebrating the fact that original content is finally coming up, which is great. So do we know what is stopping us from accepting animation?
So it's very clear to me actually, because I've been to so many festivals in the world, and I've met so many filmmakers, and I'm also dealing with the OTT channels almost on a weekly basis, if not a monthly basis. And there are pitches happening constantly, and many of the pitches are failing, and it's a constant learning from each of the pitches that fails. And it's very clear what they are saying is that this level of storytelling that we want is not available in India for most people, right? We are able to think in terms of children's content, animation, children's content. We're able to create that. We're able to do our own number in terms of Bollywood as well. But Bollywood also, if you see, Bollywood does not produce stories that travel. Bollywood produces stories that travel only to the Indian diaspora. It is not producing like Korean cinema or Japanese cinema, much of it, or even now Middle Eastern cinema. A lot of it is creating a lot of films and stories that actually travels across the world. So animation also, by nature of the fact that it's expensive, they want stories that travel. It should be rooted in your local flavor and your local content. So you can make a breadwinner, which is based on obviously an Afghan story, but the breadwinner or the one, there are many animation films like what Michelle Ocelot makes. Now these are films that actually travel, so they speak to a large audience, they speak to everybody across the world. And we are not able to create those stories that are magical, that are intrinsically Indian, like a cello show that is there. It's a rarity. Like a cello show is something that has been created in India, or a lunchbox that has been created in India that is resonated across Europe or across the world. Maybe the marketing and the distribution is not as powerful as the one for the American movies. Maybe that kind of money is not riding it. But having said that, is there anything that can be faulted with the story or the execution or the storytelling? Nothing. So there are specific films, Indian films, that have made it. But even if you take a Lagan, essentially, a Lagan will also go to China and probably do a great run there, or whatever, a few things here and there. But essentially, even a Lagan, people will watch in America or Europe, and they will not be able to identify it, that why is it that the protagonist all of a sudden breaks into a song, and why is he dancing now, and what is happening here, and why did he change his mood, and now why is he smiling all of a sudden, stuff like that. So there are many idiosyncrasies that we bring in Bollywood that the international audience is not able to identify, because even their musicals like La La Land, or even if you look at Chicago, they are very different in form. They have a very different chutzpah to it. They have a very different integrity to it. We don't seem to be having that integrity over here in terms of storytelling. So I think once we have enough people, either the world comes to them, so we create a platform here to groom our animation filmmakers, storytellers, to actually get mentorship from some international group of storytellers internationally. Either they come here, or our people keep going to MIFA and keep pitching there, keep pitching in MIPCOM, MIPTV, and keep trying to see if they can actually. So it's an expensive proposition for Indians, right? So ideally, the platform should come. They should be created by us Indians, and we should call the world to come and mentor, to come and tutor us, to come and nurture our talent. And that is something that we are working on, to try to create that platform here, so that we can nurture our talent, we can mentor our talent, and we can make sure that our talent does not have to travel and spend lakhs of rupees just to get some feedback which they cannot address, because the next time they will not have that 5 lakhs to go to NC or to Cannes or to some other international animation film festival or some film market, and it's simply not affordable. So that's what it is.
Sorry to jump in. You just made me think of the similarities with Africa. And what I can say is that there is an imposter syndrome with people coming from previously either colonized. And so even when you're saying to me, other people should come and mentor you, I'm a firm believer that we need to do it ourselves. You know what I mean? And I know mentorship is very important because there's a cross-pollination of ideas, which is very important. That's also why I'm here, that cross-pollination of ideas. But the one thing that I find, even in Africa, why are we waiting? Who are we waiting for? We are our own saviors, and we need to produce those films. We need to create those stories. We need to be confident with the stories that we tell. A lot of us have that thing that we're waiting for the West. We're waiting for, the North to come and rescue us and tell our stories. And for us, that's happened for many years, where people come to South Africa or Africa and extract those stories. That's one of the biggest things that we're also in our negotiations with the Netflixes, with the Disneys, is to ensure that our gems, just like our gold, our jewels of storytelling, our treasures are not taken away from us. We own those, and we're able to, use those to our benefit. So I'm not an advocate for waiting for somebody else to come in and, rescue us. I absolutely agree that there should be a cross-pollination, there should be mentorship, there should be exchange of ideas. But I am very cautious of people coming and saying, let's tell your stories, because, it is part of our culture.
So I'd like to just add to that, because the realities are a little different for me, and I think a little different for all of us here, and I think most people will agree. An animation IP to create is not a one single person job. It takes millions of dollars. It takes about 100, 150 people, 200 people. An episode will cost you anywhere between $70,000 to $100,000 approximately, right? $50,000 to $100,000, let's put it this way. There is a lot at stake, right? And most studios and most OTT platforms will not be able to recover that kind of cost, purely because Netflix is selling in India for 200 rupees a month. And they are anyway dwindling in terms of their subscriptions. So they will not be able to give you that millions of dollars. The only way they can give you those millions of dollars is that if you have an original idea, which is distinct, which has a unique voice, which is Indian, which has a great Indian texture and flavor, but also appeals to the world. So it's a story that travels. How do you create stories that travel if you do not know the path? That's where whether you call it cross-pollination, whether you call it whatever term you call it, but the idea is the interaction, because at the end of the day, the go-ahead is going to come from LA, at least for all the top OTT platforms over here. And a Z will not pay you that kind of money to actually promote the kind of work that you need to do. This is an understanding that I've got after having interacted with so many other OTT platforms and looking at what is actually happening around me. So you want to add something to it?
No, I just was coming to the question initially and wanted to add a point from a different lens over here. Like, why has animation not necessarily grown from being a kiddish to a more adult? I feel like, we put this unnecessary pressure on us. Okay. पहला तो इंडस्ट्री सेटअप ही नहीं हुआ है अभी. It's just been like a very 15-year-old industry. What we not really invented animation. Bollywood has been around for quite a while. Okay, So 15 years, first, we've not even like really set up our audience within the kids itself. Like, that took us a time, and we are here right now where we can say, okay, every channel is creating an original. Now we're putting the unnecessary pressure in such a short time ki bhai ab adults ke liye bhi banao. I would say let's enjoy this. Let's make sure that this audience doesn't really run away, because we're doing fantastic work. And I'm just saying that we don't really celebrate the work which is happening in the kids space for the audiences, which is very local, done at a very small budget, but we're doing it, and it's phenomenal. I mean, if any one of your parents over here, or you would know nephew, nieces, how much time they spent with the characters which we've been creating, it's great. So I think there's a journey to it, and we need to make sure that we don't really distract ourselves or falter away, while the other avenues, will come in, which is definitely the key. And the other platforms will demand, that we create content for the adults, and move on. But kids animation, let's make it rock. It's still doing good, so we don't.
So that's doing great. No doubt about that. Let's put time a perspective. When you say 15 years, let's put it in time and perspective, and let's look at history. In 1937, Snow White and Seven Dwarfs came in at a time when people said to Disney that nobody has this time and attention to actually watch animation films as a feature film level. You can show them 5-minute short films, and that's what was happening in the theaters, right? Just 10 years ago before that, in 1927, it was black and white, and it was silent. So in 10 years, Disney went from making short films from Oswald the Rabbit. Not even 1928 is when he invented Mickey Mouse, by the way. And he started his own company in 1928, right? And 1928 to 1936, he actually, in 8 years, he actually built the company so much with many short films that he actually planted the seed idea for Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, 1937, Snow White and Seven Dwarfs releases, and it changes history in 8 years flat. Okay, now put that in perspective today. That was a time, not the internet, no technology was available. If I had to make a phone call or reach somebody, it would take me a week, maybe because the phone is not available or whatever, if I had to meet somebody. Today, everything is instant gratification. You want something, you are getting it immediately. So things are moving on the fly. If you want to create an event or you want to create a community, I can just share my number right now and I can create a community right now, which would take typically months to do. So the idea is that I think we are, I wouldn't take time into consideration. I think we are already delayed as far as adult animation is concerned. I'm just afraid that we should not miss the bus. That we have the talent. You guys are there. Many of you are youngsters. Will probably be in your 40s in about 15 years. Let's wait for another 15 years. You may not have the drive. You may not have the thing. Many of you all will probably move industries or get into graphic design or some other place or take up a job in an advertising agency or do something else. This is the time now. Your talent is being wasted. It is needed now. And so the impact has to start happening ASAP. That's what I believe in.
On a lighter note,
It was just getting nicely heated, Teja.
in India, when you're 13, 14 years old, the parents believe that, do you even need entertainment? Padhai karo pehle. First, do your studies, do your boards. When I was at that age, I used to cut cable and just go into a room and study. So little time we get. In that, I have to watch a movie or Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma or go out play cricket. This is the only little much time. Otherwise, I'll have to pretend that I am inside the room and I'm studying. So most of the households are like that. So maybe that could be the reason.
Lighter note accepted. We will move on. Okay, I'm not going to give my opinion because I feel that we are running out of time a little bit because kids is great, but I think we have a lot of people who are itching to create new content and be a part of the Indian wave of animation. And let's face it, we don't have too much of an identity when it comes to Indian animation style. We have Bollywood, like Kireet said. We even have within Bollywood alternate cinema coming up Anurag Kashyap started it, but people have accepted it. Crime thrillers, I think we've made progress in the live action gamut. And UP, we're completely with you when you say kids' original content coming up is great. And yes, it is, but I think we also need to push the boundaries to do some more. But on that note, let's also move on. And the next question, Kireet, is actually addressed to you, because you spoke about trying to create pitch ideas. So when do you know you have a good idea? How do you know it's a good one? And also, do you study the data and come up with an idea in today's data-related thing, or do you come up with an idea and then fix it to genre, age, preference? How do you go about it?
So I come from also to make a living. I also do advertising films, and data is over there is very big, because you make a film or you make a scratch film and it's gone for data. It's gone for a focus group, FGD, which is called a focus group discussion. And the data comes from there, and then I didn't like the film and all that. And all of us laugh at the whole thing, including the agency heads. They also know that this is bullshit. So we know that all of it is driven by instinct. If you like something and you know that you believe in it, there will be a lot of naysayers, right? You cannot not be listening, right? If you're narrating, the best litmus test is get hold of cynics, people who are not afraid to give you feedback, people who are ruthless but sensible, and who can give you constructive feedback and say, this works or this doesn't work, and narrate your idea. And narrate it with full throttle passion. And if they are engaged and they say this is a great idea, and you do that repeatedly with many people, and then start doing it with people who you think could be decision makers as well, who are people who have experience, but people who are honest and truthful to the core, not sycophants. Okay, so you need to do that with the people around you. And if they are saying the idea is going to work, and in that you can put in a marketing mix as well, people who are marketing, because at the end of the day it will come down to the marketing department of any television channel or OTT, because they are eventually they're going to decide, and they sometimes come with a very limited vision or a view of whatever there is, right? And the idea is, if you feel that there is a gut instinct and people are enjoying it, and you can actually, you feel that this is it, then I don't see reason why the idea will not work. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Anyone else wants to add to that? Or
So each story has its audience, or will find its audience. So I think as a creator, that's a very important thing. How do you tap into that? And how can that give you the feedback to refine your story? Do you know your audience already? Or do you know it from a data to figure it out? YouTube tells you how many likes you're getting on a certain video. That tells you who they are. You can go deep dive, which region, whatever. So that helps you refine what you're really creating. And it's a very important thing for any creator, because essentially you're not living in a solitary. You're basically in an ecosystem where you want your story to be told and the audience wants to receive it, and that's where you find the connection. So find your audience, or the ways to figure it out. I think that really helps to refine you as a creator and a storyteller.
I think I'll go a little bit technical. So I read quite a lot of scripts, and I'm going to use that as feedback from the feedback that I give people when I read their scripts. A lot of the time, they lack character development. So I would say a great story has great character development. And I think these days it's also about world building. If I can see the world and I can feel it, and even if it's an outer space experience, if it is so enticing and attractive and has got that thing, that je ne sais quoi, that for me is already a great story. So a lot of the scripts that I go through, those are the two main things where you can see this person hasn't developed their characters well, and so people don't understand who they are following. They don't know what the story is about, and then the other thing is really about building the world so that people feel themselves in that space. And I mean, we've seen particularly in the VFX space as well, just to jump into I don't know whether it's the beautiful sister or the ugly sister of animation VFX, but is that a lot of movies are now so VFX heavy. That's really what's taking, and making them a lot more interesting. So I would say that if people could develop their character and the world building, you've already got a script that is interesting from a technical perspective. And of course, you've got to breathe in life and that essence, that thing that makes all of us connected to the story. A lot of us saw, I'm sure you've watched the Korean, why am I forgetting it? The one that we all followed, Squid Game. That's it, Squid Game. And it was a phenomena because to some extent we connected with those characters. We could see ourselves, in that space. And so character, and of course world building.
Thank you. Do you want to add? Okay. Okay. Now that it's working now. Now that we've covered basically ideation, let's move on to the next stage. Say we have a good idea, and you want to prepare a pitch. So can you give some advice to our creators here on when do you think a project is pitch ready, and what are the few steps you should take in ensuring that this is how you should pitch, and this is how absolutely not to pitch? Like, what are the no-nos? What are the things to do? Just some tips and tricks. Anybody can answer.
So I can tell you about my process. My process has been that I have pitched, for example, in this space, when you're pitching, you're constantly pitching, and failure is inevitable. Success is a fluke. Okay, so you have to be pitching all the time. Any filmmaker, even Anurag Kashyap will tell you that. Okay, so all of them, it's like you're constantly pitching and you don't know which idea will actually fly and why it'll fly and how it'll fly. So my process has been that I have been pitching, and then I'm learning by looking at how others are pitching, what they are pitching and what their ideas are all about. So that is the best way, according to me, is to just go out there and pitch, learn, falter, fall, learn, again, find mentors, get feedback from people who you think can give you honest feedback, who know their marbles and who know their stuff. Find that and go back and pitch again. And simultaneously also see what others are doing and how they are doing it, how they are creating the pitch Bibles, and looking at them and learning from them of what their mistakes are and what their strengths are. And looking at success stories as well of how they pitched and how they angled it and how they actually got through. Although that may also be a fluke, like I said, there's, everything is, and when I say fluke means it does not mean that the preparation is not there. The preparation has to be 100%. So it's actually not a fluke because it's so much of rigor involved in actually building a Bible. But beyond that also you need to really get lucky sometimes, and you need to be having a great deal of fluency in your pitching. You need to rehearse a lot, and you need to be convinced, and every single pitch needs to get better and better. That's how I do it.
Okay.
So storytelling is not a new thing. It's been there forever. It's as old as the time. So when you prepare a pitch, the Bible is not. It's important for the audience, for the person that you're pitching, to see what it is. But you are the most important aspect in the pitch. It's not the Bible. So don't focus too much on the Bible. Don't lean onto it too much. It is only to paint a picture to the listener. That's all. So you should know your story, your characters inside you. So when you go out there, you involve them. When you tell a story, you look at them, you tell them what you feel, what the character is about, and what is it that about that character that stands out for you. So you tell them that. So this is what is the exciting aspect of that character. This is what the exciting aspect of that story. What excited you to make that world, create that world, share it. And the Bible is there, the tool is there, the presentation is up there. You can tell them that, like a reference, instead of telling a picture is equivalent to 1,000 words, you can say, this is how this girl looks like, this is how this guy looks like, and this is how I'm imagining the world. But then bring them back to you, because it is your story, you are telling them. So tell them the story, involve them, look into their eyes, and take them on the journey.
Case in point, example of Lumpot, which Weber pitched to Cartoon Network. After much coaxing, please submit. So this was just one page with a little, like, hand-drawn sketch and few lines about it. But it was coming from Webhub, and of course that we have a relationship. But the point was, who's the personality and the creator behind it, like, really mattered when it was, like, shared with the, like, the rest of the APAC communities and the stakeholders who were going to make the decision. Post that, of course, you can deep dive, because the thing, like, with us executives in this channels is that, like, who's going to be the showrunner and how are they going to make sure that the investment is going in the right place? I think that's a really key thing over here. So once that stage was crossed, of course, we deep dived into the development, into the pilots, into all the rest of the things before it was finally globally greenlit. But this is a starting point. I could add to that, like, don't invest too much money into creating long trailers and, getting there, because that's still a later stage, and then any channel or a platform who wants to greenlight would want to come and add more to it, frankly. So you have to be a little flexible about it. We also very touchy about, we're investing money, we need to also have our say in it. So, no, so just don't basically, like, go overboard in investing into that. However, definitely straight to your story, straight to your vision, and your communication skills around that time.
Thank you. I wouldn't mind two of them, but the business of animation or filmmaking is a business. I keep reiterating this. It's a business about, harnessing passion. It's harnessing storytelling. And front and center, and this is something that I sometimes get flack for, because with every person who comes to pitch ideas to us, we always have to understand what is where's the money? Where's the money in this? And a lot of people think that might be cold, but that's something that you have to always be cognizant of when you're creating a film, that you understand it also as an idea that can make money. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing as well, I agree with Kireet in what he said about, there's a lot of failure before success comes. So when you do have an idea, it'll take time for you to actually get to a point where people accept it. And sometimes it is indeed a fluke, because, for the 100 ideas that people come up with, there is only one that has, everybody's attention, because it's the idea of that time. So it's also there's a bit of luck in that you have to be at the right place at the right time with the right idea. I've met a lot of filmmakers who come up and say, I pitched 10 films with Netflix or Disney and only one was taken. And all the other 9 ideas are great ideas. So sometimes it's the time, it's the moment, it's what they are looking for at that point in time. And just to go back again to my point, sorry, I felt like I hadn't fully fleshed my point about the importance of people coming, for example, from India, Africa. The gold lies in all our culture. We've got a myriad of stories. I expressed yesterday, there was a story that the gentleman at the hotel was telling us, and I keep forgetting the characters. And I'd never heard that story. And that is where all our treasures are, and that cultural knowledge. I was told, you guys understand the word Gyan. Like, that is where all the Gyan, there you go, Gyan, And so that knowledge, that reservoir of what our grandmothers taught us, what our ancestors taught us, all of that is a reservoir of information. And what I'm seeing with a lot of streamers is they're interested in that, information or those stories. So maybe the time is right for those stories. So all of you are writing stories. Think through the history, the past, the present, and how you can merge that to tell those interesting stories, because we're not looking for a second Hollywood. Hollywood is doing its thing. It's great. It's fantastic. But we need new ideas, and part and parcel of being able to create a great pitch is coming up with something that is novel, that is going to have your essence in that. So there is, I would say, 99% failure and 1% success, but you only need one film to put you over the threshold.
But that is to not say it's bleak. don't for one second think it's all bleak. The journey is so much fun. So yeah, it is true. It is true that you should know that reality, but the journey is going to be fun. You'll have bad days, but there's going to be good days as well. The journey is going to be fun. You do what you set out doing. You wanted to draw, right? Draw. You want to tell stories. Say that. You don't have to, that story doesn't have to, every story doesn't have to find a home. You keep doing that. And as you go on the journey, you will find some jobs. You'll keep paying your bills. And your moment will come at some time. And then you'll tell the story. I was writing for a show for the longest, and suddenly one day, they wanted to do a spin-off from that show. And they said, he called and he gave me one line, and can you write a spin-off for this? I was ready because I went through all this journey and it was fun. Yeah, I have the dream of making my own show. I had the dream, but the moment had to come. But when it came, I was ready because I went through all the journey. So it's not at all bleak. Go for it.
That was very sweet, Teja. On that note, a second question to you. We felt, like a lot of us were discussing this, that, animation writing is definitely separate from live action writing. And while we see a lot of live action writers, India has a dearth of good animation writers. And I think, could you sort of tell maybe 2 or 3 points in which an animation writer has to refocus, their skills in order to be, good, successful?
I think it comes from a point where what you would like to do. It's not like you choose to become an animation writer. You don't sit one day and say that, okay, I want to be an animation writer. You find that inspiration inside you, and then you want to write. Like a storyboard artist can become a writer, or I don't draw, but I always had that caricatured view of the world. I'm walking through. Yesterday I was here in the fest. I quietly go about doing my stuff. I just observe the people here. I observe the characters. It's going on in my mind. I have an entertainment running in my head. So it's like that. So you have your caricatured view of the world. You observe certain characters, certain quirks, and then whenever it's all stored inside, and whenever there is an opportunity that comes up, it comes out. So an animation writer. If I have to spell it out, it needs to be more visual and more caricatured view. It's not a straight like a live action writer. It's a little different. So same difference between a regular classic painting and a caricature. It's like that. At least for me, that's been the difference. And when I tell my stories, I enjoy it. I enjoy the exaggerations. I enjoy the impossibilities, the physics impossibilities of it. I enjoy all that. So, but whereas some others might enjoy, my friends who are other writers who are into live action, they enjoy the drama. They enjoy delving deep into a particular human emotion and completely get into the depth of it. I like to keep it lighthearted and have fun with it.
Okay.
So just adding to that point on the animation writer part, visual, creating the world, as you mentioned, and connecting with the character, it's a very key thing. But, if you're just creating the story by your own self, that's a different process altogether. You can revisit it during the animatic stage or an animation stage and probably change things and and be done with it. But when you're working with, let's say, 500 people, depending on that one script, which has to go through a process, from script writing to then developing the characters to animatic to animation. I think that's where to have all the details in the script right in the beginning really helps, because that person who's in the animation team has to also see it, or the animatic team should be able to see what the visualization of the writer was, and that's where it has to be more descriptive for us to go back, because coming back from the process really hits everybody down. And that's what is expected, from the writers who are writing for animation. And of course, have fun.
So, when I was studying in film school, we were given a definition of how do you actually write for animation, right? Because animation writing was a course that we had. And one of the paradigms that were given to us was animation begins where live action gives up, right? And that is something that we live with. Animation actually begins with the caricaturing or the exaggeration aspect of it and all that stuff. So animation actually begins where live action gives up. And I thought it was fantastic, the explanation. And there was another one that our professors used to say, because a lot of us would come with scripts and the professors would tell us, you know, that do you think your script can be done in live action? And many would say yes. So the professor would say, then it's a bad animation script, because if it can be done in live action, it should not be done in animation. Now, I lived my life with those paradigms, but you know what? That is all demolished. Right now, when we talk about, as of today, you see films like Breadwinner, you see films like Waltz with Bashir, you see a lot of the adult animation that is happening. You see even the kind of subjects that they are picking up, whether they are picking up philosophy, or they're picking up a cultural context, or they're picking up LGBTQ issues, or whatever issues they are talking about. They are doing it in a very adult way, and they are doing it in a way that is just bringing the whole idea, which is essentially a live action idea, in a graphic form. And that is what animation has become. So I have started making a distinction between animation also, because a lot of the stuff, when we talk about the one that is animation begins where live action gives up, is actually cartoon films. And animation is a much broader term. I think animation encompasses a lot more human emotions right now, and it encompasses a graphic form and a stylization of movement with adult ideas and with adult concepts and adult storytelling. Even that is included now. So I think we need to expand and we need to change our understanding and paradigms of what animation actually means. Cartoon films have become a subset of animation. And that's what it's become. In the past 5, 7, 10 years, you can see that it's very predominant.
Yeah. Okay, the next question is basically for Nosipho, since you're from a law background and also UP to an extent. Both of you can answer. Again, while pitching, this is a concern that, again, some people have expressed, that while you need to go out there and share your ideas, and like we discussed earlier, there is like too much ideas, you're being bombarded. How do you protect your IP? What is the best way to go? I mean, you know, like young creators or studios for that matter, what is the norm before pitching? Like, is there a way you can protect your IP before pitching? What would you advise?
So, putting my legal hat on, before I conduct any meeting with any creative, I ask for an NDA. So that's very, very important. And all your work should be, you know, should have your name stamped on it. Sometimes what people do with scripts or, you know, pitch Bibles is to send them to themselves, so via email. So you send it to yourself and you've got a date stamp or a time stamp. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm not sure what the laws in India are, but I can give you kind of like a global perspective, which is, you know, IP law, there's a Berne Convention, which a lot of us have signed up to. It's a treaty. And whatever IP you create and you memorialize it, so you write it down or you film it to say that you did it, that already registers your IP to yourself. So the other person will have to prove that they created that before you. But those are little things that artists, which don't cost a lot. You can also go to a lawyer. I'll be happy, you know. No, I do pro bono work with artists all the time. But those are little things that you can do for yourself. Send an email to yourself. There's some, for example, in America, I know there's a place that you can go and register your script. In South Africa as well, there's a writers guild where you can register all your stuff with them, knowing that it's been stamped and it's been registered under your name. So those are some of the little things that you can do for yourself, because to now prove that you were the first person to have that idea is going to be very difficult. If I asked 10 people here in the audience to tell me a story about their day-to-day, the likelihood that we would tell the same story is very high. And how do we, you know, assert that the one person is the original content creator? We can't. So ideas are not copyrightable. An idea cannot be copyrightable. what you can copyright is once it's memorialized on paper or on document, something tangible and physical that we can interact with. So that is what I can say from a legal perspective.
Yeah, so apart from mailing it to yourself, I think one of the other things from an India perspective that I can share as information is the Screenwriters Association. For those who are writing for animation, do become a member of the SWA and make sure that you copyright your ideas and your concepts and your synopsis, whatever you do, you make sure you copyright it and you mention the copyright when you're sending it. Because when you send it without any kind of footer or without any kind of copyright on below, people think that it is something that they can very easily take the idea and they can flinch it and they can modify it slightly and they can pass it off as their ideas. So it's important that you care for your ideas. It's important that you protect them and you let the other person know that this is protected and they will not be taken for a ride. So that is important.
Do you want to add?
Right. So it's important to safeguard yourself from those things, as mentioned by the panelists here. Even at the channels and we do our safeguarding because we receive a lot of pitches at the same time and we're not sure whether it's your original idea or you have probably copied it from yourself. So even we have an internal processes in which we'll be asking details as a submission form before we accept any kind of pitches too. It's again to build trust and safeguard ourselves from any kind of infringement later on. Yeah. But I mean, overall, I think the intention is to create a content. I mean, the channel is there to showcase and build the trust, but all these things really help you at your end, to build the trust and also showcase your confidence and your professionalism, when you're sending your ideas out.
There's a small follow-up question to this. With, again, the advent of social media, Instagram, and a lot of creator, platforms, there is also a school of thought that believes that it's better to put your idea out there for visibility and then anyway, like you said, if somebody wants to take it, there'll be a lot of changes in it anyway. So would you recommend that? Because there's a school of thought that believes, at least I can push out my own creative out there and I have it recorded and people have seen it. So how would you advise the youngsters about that?
I think one of the things that we have to all understand is that the legal process in this country is completely broken. We know that. If you are having something out there and let's say somebody has infringed the copyright and has posted it as your own or has passed it off as their own and you choose to go legal on them, easy 15 to 20 years gone. 50 to 20 years gone and a few lakhs gone before you can even get justice, and in that also there will be many technicalities. So it will purely boil down to, is your lawyer more expensive than their lawyer? And that's really what will boil down. No, this is unfortunately, it's the fact, and it's a fact in America as well. It's not here in India at all. In America, the only thing is that if they feel that your case is strong and it's millions of dollars a suit, they will say, okay, we'll take it on and we'll take 50% of what we will take 50% of what the wins from the suit is. So it will not cost you for the lawyer, but the lawyer will definitely take their fee. If they think the winnability is high, then they will take their fee from the winnability amount of money or whatever. But in America, still you'll get justice within a year or two. You will not get justice over here. So I don't know, does that answer your question? Is that a good idea, bad idea? I don't think it's a good idea.
I don't know. Absolutely unsure.
Maybe you can malign some people and maybe you can take them and you can call them out and whatever, hashtag them and have some people saying, oh, this is very bad, horrible people, they plagiarize and whatever.
Yeah, no. My question was slightly different. Yeah. My question is like a lot of smaller creators struggle to get their pitches heard and they want to create concepts and they feel that at least if I put out an idea and it gains popularity on social media, it's a way to go and, the idea gets the love, eyeballs, and the channel or whatever, the funder, the producer is going to come back to you. So that's another route. That's what I meant.
So I think there are a lot of successful examples of that. I think Peppa Pig is also that. Peppa Pig,
Possibly,
I'm not sure. But there are many successful examples of that where people have put their small animations and small tidbits on the net, and they become so popular, and they've got millions of followers, and it has a captive audience. So automatically the channel or the OTT platform is wanting to now look at it because they have a captive audience already, and the character has become a brand, a saleable brand. So yeah, it may be a good idea, but you need to have like hundreds of ideas, and you need to be pushing it through every single week or every single day sometimes, just to make sure that your character is popular. For example, one of the things is R.K. Lakshman, the cartoonist who was there in the 50s till the 80s, used to make cartoons every single day. There used to be political satire cartoons, and today that is now being done into a series, right? So is Calvin and Hobbes, and so is even a whole lot of other things. So you can put your material out there, and if it becomes popular, people want to make a series out of it.
Like you said before, it takes a lot to make an animation, to complete an animation project. It's not just one person's game. Idea can come from one person, but it takes a lot many more ideas and a lot more work to embellish it and make it into a final product. So it's maybe a good idea would be to partner with someone who's like a senior, or you will have some friends in the industry, some people that you trust. Not everybody is a thief. So you find someone, go partner with a studio who's like a senior whom you trust and who you think would give you that playing field, that freedom, while giving you a practical advice. Go partner with them, maybe write an agreement with them, and together you guys can go and pitch it, and maybe it'll find a home.
So we've had a couple of artists come up with, that idea where they've got a concept and they want to showcase it on Instagram because indeed they want to create a following. I think it depends what it is that you're trying to achieve. If that is what you're trying to do, then great. And it helps you on your market research as well. In what this guy was actually doing, he was creating different characters, and he wanted to see which character would get, interest. And so, that seemed to work out well for him. So I think it just depends what you want to do. But I also wanted to, comment on what Kireet was saying about, talking just about reputational risk. A lot of companies, especially in the creative space, do not want a reputational risk. I mean, not just in the creative space, but just across the board. So, people often want to work as ethically as possible. So indeed, like what you're saying, Teja, that it's best to work with people that you've got the same ethics and no one is there to steal. They're abundant of ideas, so why steal someone else's idea? So reputational risk is a big thing as well in terms of making sure that someone else doesn't nick your idea.
Thank you. So I've been told that we're running out of time, or we've run out of time. So let's do one thing. I'm going to can the 3 other questions I had, and let's open it out to 3 quick questions to the audience.
Hi. So I just have one question, and it pertains more to the storytelling part of it than to the actual animation part of it. And so, Kireet, you mentioned that Mediterranean cinema, for example, is now popping up, and Korean movies and Japanese movies are now being streamed worldwide, and same with like adult animation TV shows, right, like Arcane or Love, Death and Robots. So my question is that, do you think it's because all these things have grief as a central theme in them on some level or the other?
Sure.
Grief. Yeah, like, so for example,
Not
Squid Game.
necessarily. Sorry?
No, for example, Squid Game, right? It's about...
Squid Game is pure drama. It's not grief.
I know, but...
Grief will always be one of the emotions. There will be ecstasy as well. There will be despondency as well. There will be jubilation as well. There will be a whole lot of emotions. It's a seesaw of emotions.
Yeah.
Grief is just one part of it.
No, what I meant was that, do you think, is that why it sells? Right? We were talking about something that, appeals globally, right? And is still intrinsic to the creator.
Right.
So
what sells is great storytelling, drama. That is the only word that sells. If you are able to create a dramatic premise, and if you're able to create great drama, in which you will see a seesaw of emotions. If you're able to, if you're a great dramatic writer,
Right.
then you will be successful. You will need to understand drama.
Right. Thank you. Anybody
Although
else?
one classic best example is the recent Black Panther, 2, where I think grief was a very central to the idea, and I think really connected. And it went also because Chadwick had passed
Had
away. So,
actually passed away. Yeah.
but I mean, that's something which you can really communicate with an adult audience rather than a kid. So yes, it just really connects. It's a beautiful way, to tell a story.
Okay, I have more questions, but I think everybody else does too.
We can answer that off, no problem.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I do have a mic. Am I audible? I do have a Hi, I'm Malvika. You had earlier mentioned that if while writing script for animated films, if it's working for a live action film, then it's not good enough for as an animated film. Can you please expand on that? Because right now we see a lot of live action adaptation of the classics like Aladdin and Lion King. Although Lion King is getting a lot of hate and love, at the same time it is also found appealing to a whole new generation. And Aladdin has got a lot of love, saying that it stands on the feminist side a little more. So regarding that, can you please
Right.
explain?
So, as I said about what it works for live action is a bad animation script, I also expanded on that and I said that's no longer the truth. The truth is changing, so that is a different conversation. What you're talking about is adaptation. Adaptation, Disney's been the master of adaptation. So Hans Christian Andersen, 1936, 1937, he made films like Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, and even Bambi, and even Dumbo, and a whole lot of other films that you see, Cinderella or Snow White, many of the films, all of the films, Gulliver's Travels, for example, not done by Disney, but done by Fleischer Studios. These are all adaptations. So adaptation is a different conversation altogether. And that adaptation is still happening right now. What you're talking about is remakes. You're not talking about adaptations. What you're talking about, okay, Lion King already happened, adaptation from an African tale. Why is it being remade right now? Well, it's all business, because we know what is happening, that something already worked, let's rejig the formula and let's make more money out of it. So Hollywood is not being creative right now. When they're making the superhero movies and they're making the remakes, it is pretty much the kind of remakes that is happening in India as well. There's no creativity involved there. There's only more money making, and it's more of the business that is being focused upon.
Guys, one last question, which is on behalf of everyone. I've been told the last question has to be asked, and I also think we should. We basically want to address the F word, funding. Everybody
It is
wants
the
to.
F word.
Everybody basically wants some idea. Everybody knows we need funding. We are not wanting to get specifics, monies, amounts, but advise people, like Kireet said himself, like how are people to go about it? Should they work through producers? What kind of money are they looking at? Because that is never taught to any art or design student anywhere. So any advice quickly on funding?
I can address that in 2 minutes, and I'm guaranteeing you that you will go out there and you'll do nothing about it. Okay. But the idea is, how do we make this session constructive? Because it's a longer engagement. How do we make this particular session constructive? If you guys want funding, you have to start with writing the story that gets funded, right? What we've been talking about. Like, is your story fundable? Is it business worthy? Is it something that is going to appeal? How are you going to know that? If you're going to sit in your cocoon and you're going to write your stories, that's not going to happen. So here, right now, what I'm proposing is that all you young guys get together and form a community where you meet once a week and you pitch your ideas to each other, right? If you want, I can also be part of it, and I can give you some expert advice. I'm sure I'm taking the liberty of asking Vaibhav and Suresh also to be joined part of that, where we can help you and we can mentor you guys. We can help tell you what is working, what's not working, and what can be done to it. So idea is to form the community right now. After you get out, you say, you take your each numbers down and you take a WhatsApp group or whatever community you form, and you start pitching your ideas. Now, for those who don't have ideas, will learn from the ones who are pitching the ideas and say, hey, you know what, this failed, so this is not something that I'm going to do. This is not the mistake I'm going to do. So there will be tremendous learning. Like Nosipho said, sorry, I'm not able to pronounce your name. Nosipho said, like, the ideas has to come from within us. We can seek funders, we can seek mentors and whatever help for cross-pollination and for, trying to embellish the ideas, and we can seek all that. But essentially the hard work has to be done by us. And in that, you make sure that you have the best caliber feedback within the system, because we as Indians understand each other and we understand our stories, we understand the perspective where it's coming from. I can tell you, because I studied in Canada and I worked there at the National Film Board, I can tell you a little bit more global perspective that I don't think this is going to fly. But I may be wrong, okay? So that's a perspective I can bring in. And similarly, Suresh, having traveled across the world, he can bring in his perspective, Webb can bring in his own perspective. But the idea is to form the community right now. And once we get out, we form the community, you guys get together, meet once a week, and come up with the great ideas that actually get funded.
Thank you, Kireet. I think that's been very helpful. Teja, you want to add something?
Funding comes from the networks finally, who's going to, like the distribution networks, who's going to, either it is TV channels or OTTs, they are going to pay for it. Right now we don't have direct release to cinema theaters. Not many animated movies in India gets released directly to the theaters. So then next in the studios who will invest money to pitch those shows and make them, they will say yes to certain ideas. They will take to the the distribution networks, and that's where the funding comes from. And if you want to, as creators, you want to put your ideas out there, and that needs to get published, you have to find the producers, find the studios, and then they help you put the idea together, and they'll in turn go to the networks, the distribution networks, and they'll pitch it, and once that gets greenlit, gets the funding. And everything will happen after that.
I agree totally with what Teja and Kireet have said, but I think also the thing is with funding is one has to be careful, especially because we all want to hold on to our IP. Funding comes with, treacherous, pitfalls, in the sense that if you want somebody else to fund your film, just understand that you may lose your IP in all of that. So that's a conversation, again, that a lot of artists get very unhappy with, and rightfully so, because if you've created an idea and someone wants to give you money for it and take everything. And in the last sort of 5 years, I know both Disney and Netflix in the beginning used to let you keep your IP, but now that's no longer the case. So that's what I can say about funding.
So there's a cycle in the industry which always goes on. It'll be great time when the channels and everybody will be looking out for content and money will be coming for everybody, no matter what the thing is. But there are times when, then the channel will just squeeze down because it's a contraction ecosystem around the world, or anything is not supporting them to invest so much. And currently, probably every industry, including media industry, currently is in that stage right now. If you would look at the share stock of all the big media companies. But the point from your end as creators is to be ready for the moment, and that's something which you can do, which doesn't really cost you, which inherently you have the skill for, and you can do plenty of it, and the time will come, as you said, and if it comes, then are you ready with it is the question. But not just one, you'll have to find many more, make sure that you have 10, 15 behind you, because that moment of, luck versus the opportunity, you'll have to evaluate that, probably if one is not lucky, but among the 15, something will be lucky. So be ready for that, and that doesn't cost much from your guys.
All right, thank you very much. Nobody has anything else to add, right? So I think we're really out of time, and we want to thank everyone on this panel for giving their, sharing their experience and expertise. Hope you all learned something from this. Thank you very much. A token of gratitude from AGIF to all of you for being a part of this wonderful panel. Thank you. Nosipho was already a part of our show yesterday, and she's got her little trophy, but yeah. Yeah. It's a light. You're the light of the industry. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be starting with the next couple of sessions, which are on gaming again. So for all gaming enthusiasts, we have 2 back-to-back sessions where we take a deep dive into gaming. So take a quick 2-minute break and we'll get started on